Welcome to the chaos sector. We return to the Matrix. It is claimed that Ethan's family does have his golf clubs. Well, we can't truly know the truth about anything in this case, to be honest. But someone left a comment claiming that Moscow PD hadn't given the golf clubs back. They've been impounded into their evidence locker. Yet someone else claimed the mother stated she has them. The chaos doesn't like confusion, so we'll just let it be. But that directed our attention to the home overall. Doesn't it seem odd that a home basically full of females didn't have any source of security, like a ring door camera? Are we to assume that those housemates were so into their own lives and having fun that they never thought about their safety? Don't think so. They were more than likely concerned about their safety, but unfortunately, they were demanded not to have a security camera installed. Now, before anyone falls off the deep end, this is our theory about why apparently there weren't any cameras installed. Why would this be the case? Well, this prevents anything from being captured on camera, like drugs being trafficked in and out of the home. I know. Chaos keeps attaching that onto the housemates. But having no camera outside the home, at least on one of the entrance points, is not normal. It doesn't matter if there are our regulars that visit inner and outer circle peers lounging around. It's about safety, and I'm sure the parents wanted them to install security cameras, you see? Their children are away from home, living the college life, but also realize that trouble pops up every once in a while, so keep yourselves safe on your journey. Didn't Xana's father visit the home to repair her bedroom door? I mean, Ethan could have done that, right? He did work at a hardware store back in Washington. He was always there. Why didn't Xana ask him to repair it, especially since he would care about privacy as well? That always stood out, repairing her bedroom door's locked, unlocked, locking, unlocking, security, safety, yet no one installed a security camera. It doesn't add up to me. There's just something off with details in this case, and it's pulling the chaos to those families. We can say, it was coincidental. The father had visited once before, noticed it, and decided to repair it. But there's just something eerie about the families that we've consciously made an effort not to bring to the forefront to keep things tame in our investigation. But there's definitely something secretive in their energy. Everyone has broken this down. We touched on it just a tad, but we'll briefly touch on it again. Xana's mother struggled with a drug addiction. Madison's father and Madison's stepmother also struggled with a drug addiction. Steve's brother struggled with a drug addiction. There's a lot of drug addiction swirling around, and if we apply the theory that the motive was drug-related, well, unfortunately, could this be a sad case of offspring karma? We're not the channel digging into that, but if there is evidence somewhere in that fog, we have to put the spotlight on it. There is some connected tissue here that we all know about. Xana's mother was represented by none other than guess who? Ann Taylor. Bonnie and Clyde could have been her supplier, and it has been speculated that all of them have become informants. This pulls in those housemates by default due to not only relation but also proximity, being the area in which criminal activity is taking place: Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. If the home was in fact a trap house, the pushers wouldn't want any evidence via surveillance footage tracking back to them. Also, it's possible some of those men in blue would be exposed on camera as well. Jules made a mockery of the draft design the prosecution created, nicknaming it a dollhouse. And it made the chaos think. Could it have been, a dollhouse? We don't like to get too deep into sensitive areas, but after 2 years, technically there is still no motive to those murders. We are all presenting our theories as to why it happened. Some of them are logical, some are ridiculous, some are in between. But when you have a case that hasn't established a motive, things that are commonly known as motives come about. And the most common motive here is that it was related to drug activity. This seems to be the most logical. But honestly, right behind that, or even in connection to that, would be a motive related to sex. As the slogan goes, sex, drugs, and violence. They all seem to apply here, right? We glanced at a few content creators who posed that possibility in the past, yet we never really presented it as a possible theory. Bonnie's family claimed that when she hooked up with Clyde, her life was ruined. She started doing drugs, started selling drugs, and completely lost her way. They even claimed he was abusive to her. Now she makes her choices in life, so this is not to go that easy on Bonnie. But another characteristic of Clyde was that he was a pimp. And there's the sex connection. Perhaps they had their eyes on some of those girls in the home to become, quote, dolls. A proposition was presented indirectly, perhaps through a third party, or even Bonnie, and the girls turned it down. If you know anything about pimps, they don't like being turned down, my friends. And this could lead to what? Stalking, tracking those girls' every move, making them feel uncomfortable in their own skin. Again, our theories are always centered in logic, so let's stay focused. If anyone recalls, we broke down the grub truck footage, presenting our take on a theory of someone else named Neeks Peaks, who claimed drugs were exchanged. Now, Joe DeVito, who we nicknamed Chunky in that video, and Susie, the female in the black Idaho sweater, were the small-time version of Bonnie and Clyde in our analysis. But the thing that stuck out there was Susie was talking to Kaylee, then went over to her group and was whispering about Kaylee to her friends. This is a secret. Now, although several students were interacting with Kaylee and Madison, it didn't truly feel like they were surrounded by friends and genuine associates to the chaos. They appeared isolated among that crowd. Perhaps everyone cast them off as the, quote, party girls, and we all know what slanderous term goes along with that. But Susie's whispering or gossip about Kaylee seemed very spiteful, spreading rumors about their sexual activity, claiming they're doing things that they weren't doing for money, to afford a nice Range Rover. Sure, it could be jealousy, but it could have also been a smear campaign by Bonnie and Clyde, who the girls denied in becoming dolls on the market.
Yes, let's be honest here. Money is very important, and working only keeps your head above water in some cases. Heck, sometimes that's not enough. So when you have college students who are more than likely financially struggling, there will be temptations. Now what we concluded is that someone or a few of those housemates got involved with the wrong people, and it was centered around money. Our conclusion is that the housemates, collectively, agreed to allow drugs to traffic throughout their home. The pushers give them a cut for allowing this operation, and all they have to do is keep everything discreet. But something went wrong, and we have to assume that discreet operation was no longer. Now that I think about it, what if Madison just decided to snitch, as her best friend and Kaylee was leaving for good? She may have felt like, well, what's the point now? Might as well spill the beans. My best friend is leaving me behind, so I might as well just spill it. Mind you, whatever she told Adam, Jack Showalter also knew, which led to him warning her. Madison was drunk and didn't seem to care about the consequences. We can suggest that if she was sober, she wouldn't have told Adam whatever that was, you see. So this was a sense of a breaking point, mental exhaustion, of holding a secret. And when she became intoxicated, all of that mental exhaustion was released. If your best friend is leaving town, it's a very depressing time, you know? It's like half of you is fading away. Madison was definitely feeling miserable that entire time. Although she appeared to be having fun at the grub truck, we could see the sadness in her body language and her facial expressions. Kaylee, on the other hand, didn't seem too sad. Perhaps she was a bit stronger emotionally. But Madison appeared like her life came crashing down. The point here is that those housemates were in trouble, and the college circle knew it as well. Jack Showalter did warn them. That's more than we can say for either of those surviving housemates, right? Now let's touch on the mystery behind Murphy's whereabouts. This just keeps getting more absurd the more that is released. So apparently Murphy was outside around 4 a.m. in the morning, but then he was back inside when authorities arrived later that morning. So the obvious question here is who the hell took him out of the house around 4 a.m. and then who the hell placed him back inside the home before the authorities arrived later that morning? If you followed the chaos, you would know who we allege to have done this, but let's break it down for clarity based on the claim. If Dylan claims to have heard Kaylee upstairs playing with Murphy around 4 a.m., the setting painted here is that Kaylee took Murphy outside, right? Okay, there's nothing wrong with this, to be honest. Kinda late, but it's not irrational. The problem, though, is if Kaylee was outside walking Murphy around 4 a.m., then wouldn't this mean she wasn't in the home once the attacks occurred? Because Murphy was reported to be outside at 4 a.m. So did someone grab Kaylee and take her back inside the home, leaving Murphy outside barking?
Seems likely, but let's first point out that these claims from law enforcement need to be taken with a grain of salt. You have phone calls from Kaylee and Madison ranged from approximately 2:30 to 3 a.m. Then, apparently Kaylee took Murphy out for a walk approximately an hour later around 4 a.m. If Kaylee is outside, was Madison with her? We're going to assume they were both outside with Murphy around this time. You know what? Let's just do it the chaos sector way here. Murphy was taken out of the house by Jack D. before the attacks. Mind you, the family stated that one of the message to Jack by Kaylee was her saying, quote, "We have a dog together," unquote. So putting this message into context, it's as if Kaylee is pleading with Jack. Saying "we have a dog together" is a form of questioning, wondering, and pleading. If you attach a previous statement to this, you would end up with a scenario such as this. Quote, Jack answered the phone. "Why are you doing this to me? I'm sorry for everything. Don't do this. We have a dog together," unquote. It pans out in that setting, right? With Murphy outside of the home while the attacks were unfolding. And the report claims the dog was outside around 4 a.m. But there was a dog heard barking earlier than that, my friends. We covered this in our audio analysis of the Linda Lane surveillance. Yeah, we know, it's controversial footage. But around 3 a.m., actually, a dog is heard literally howling, which was to the left of the camera, near the victim's home. This was Murphy. And since this was around 3 a.m., Murphy was outside prior to 4 a.m. That's right, Murphy was outside approximately an hour earlier. A dog howling could be an emotional expression of sadness, pain, feeling abandoned, and such. Murphy was howling because he knew those housemates were in danger. It's a poodle, but he still has that sixth sense about things. He knew his home, and he knew his home was under attack, especially his owner and Kaylee. Now put it all together. Jack comes and grabs Murphy out of the home, Kaylee and Madison call him, and he simply ignored their calls, and they are soon attacked and murdered. Murphy is heard howling around 3 a.m., followed by more barking and whimpers, then complete silence in the neighborhood around the time they alleged Kohlberger arrived. Everything happened prior to the alleged lone killer's arrival. We ranged the attacks and murders from 2 a.m. to 3:30 a.m. Dylan claiming to hear Kaylee upstairs with Murphy barking around 4 a.m. was an hour earlier. This could be when the security camera picked up the whimpers and barking of Murphy when he was taken out of the home. As we pointed out, they wouldn't just change the accounts, but also the time frame in which everything unfolded, because the killers were there earlier than when the alleged Kohlberger arrived. It would have already happened by the time Kohlberger would arrive in the neighborhood, which was approximately at 3:30 a.m. So it's all fuckery being dumped out here to redirect you from the trail.
Or it could be what a poster suggested. Murphy was already taken out of the house when Kaylee and Madison arrived back home, which would prompt Kaylee to call him urgently. Keep in mind the girls were with Jack D, Jack S, and Adam prior at the corner club bar, so those phone calls that late at night indicated there was a concern, with Madison also calling. The family executed damage control in saying that Kaylee liked to, quote, power call, meaning she would call constantly. Nice try, but you need more WD-40, not slick enough. If we have Dylan reported to arrive back at home around 1 a.m., before everyone else, including Bethany, as she was reported to be at the Sigma Chi party with Ethan and Zana, then this would mean she was the first one home and was the only one without an actual alibi. Well, there's another person who didn't really have an actual alibi, and he's the co-owner of Murphy. If Dylan's whereabouts were not provided and she was the first one home, then this means she's a suspect first of all. But it would also mean she had to allow someone in the home to get Murphy. Another dynamic that wasn't elaborated on, or even pointed out, was where was the interaction between the housemates once everyone arrived back home, you see? If they all were at home around 2 a.m., wasn't there a bit of joking around, teasing each other, uploading their party night on TikTok? Where is all of this content? Dylan's affidavit doesn't have any accounts from when she arrived back home, went to sleep, and then so-called was awakened by the so-called barking from upstairs. For that matter, Bethany's affidavit doesn't have any accounts of activity prior the attacks neither. It's logical to suggest that around 2 a.m. is when things started to get a bit problematic. Kaylee and Madison called Jack D. He ignores the calls because he knew what was about to unfold, and took Murphy out of the home because, get this, the dog would be a distraction. Now, before someone says they would have just locked him away. Yeah, but Murphy would still be a distraction with all the barking. It would create unnecessary loud noise that would direct attention to the dog, as opposed to focusing on completing the task. Also, if Murphy was locked away while the attacks were being carried out, and ultimately the murders, there would be scratches on the door, which indicated Murphy was aware of the violence in the home. Would make Dylan look like a fool, right? It was an intelligent move to take Murphy out of the house prior to the attacks, but a stupid move at the same time. Because although they can say Murphy was outside and barking his lungs out, it wouldn't have been Koberger who did it, because he would not have had the time to do so, and Murphy would perhaps bite him. So unless they're claiming Kaylee was basically grabbed and brought back in the home after walking Murphy, which also eliminates Koberger from being the killer, well, that person who took Murphy out of the home was someone he trusted. A double-edged sword here. No way to avoid the fact that someone who knew Murphy took him out of the home, or to the setting where Kaylee was grabbed outside and brought back inside the home, as Murphy was still outside running around. But of course, they'll just say the dog was outside around 4 a.m. and leave it as a blanket statement. Yeah, just claim the damn dog was outside at 4 a.m. barking, and then brought back inside by some fucking phantom person. It's not Kaylee, because she would be deceased already. Let's go over the crappy unsealed hearing documents. Flat out fucktardation. Quote, defendant has not met his Frank's hearing burden on issue 6, dog barking. In this issue, defendant challenges omissions pertaining to the barking dog referenced in the Payne Exhibit A. It states that at 4:17 a.m., a security camera located at a nearby residence on King Road picked up distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper, followed by a loud thud. A dog can also be heard barking numerous times, starting at 4:17 a.m. Okay, wait a minute, this needs to be fact-checked. A dog was heard prior to that, around 3:06 a.m. Here's a screenshot of our previous episode in the investigation. As you see, a dog was heard howling around 3:06 a.m., which was coming from the direction of the victim's home. That was Murphy, and we know he was outside at this moment, which also proves that there was violence already occurring in that 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. timeframe. Mind you, Kaylee and Madison were trying to reach Jack D from 2:30 a.m. to 3 a.m. Now, of course, we can also accept the possibility that those calls were the same as Xana's DoorDash order. And that pulls the time of death back a bit, perhaps right when the so-called last call was made, around 3 a.m., and then Murphy is heard howling outside around 3:06 a.m. But anyway, let's continue. Quote, the only information in the Payne Exhibit A pertaining to a dog refers to the fact that Kaylee Gonzalez's dog, Murphy, was found in her bedroom by first responders. Defendant contends that Detective Payne failed to include 3 allegedly important pieces of information pertaining to the dog. 1. That the dog heard on the security camera continued to bark for 30 minutes after the suspect left. 2. That Detective Payne conducted a test to determine that the dog was likely outside while barking. And 3. That Murphy was found without any blood on him, even though the bedroom doors were open, where the decedents were found. Okay, here we go with the fucktardation. No, wait, let's finish first. Quote, according to defendant, this omitted information would have revealed that whoever was in the house brought the dog back inside after the suspect vehicle left. He further argues this information is material and exculpatory because it undermines the narrative and timeline that supports probable cause. Unquote. Addressing point 1. Murphy was heard barking 30 minutes after the suspect left. How about he was heard barking for damn near 2 hours, from 3:06 a.m. to around 4:17 a.m., and then another 30 minutes. That's close to 2 hours. Addressing point 2. Payne conducted a test to determine Murphy was likely outside while barking. Well, if he is determining this, doesn't this mean Murphy was taken outside? Which definitely conflicts with the lone killer narrative. Addressing point 3. If Murphy was discovered without any blood on him, such as on his fur or even his paws, they are suggesting that this dog literally laid in Kaylee's bed, with the door open by the way, and never investigated the crime scene. Get the entire fuck out of here. He would have some DNA on him, just simply walking into Madison's bedroom, as he would be mourning the death of his owner. Whoever was in the house brought Murphy back inside after the suspect vehicle left. Meaning, once the suspect left, alleged to be Koberger, a mysterious person grabbed Murphy and took him back inside. But this is all kinds of fuckery, because what person would care so much to put Murphy back inside the home, but wouldn't concern themselves with the prior violence that... You know what, let's keep moving. Quote, however, defendant's argument assumes, without proof, there were no doors left open in the home after the suspect left. This assumption is not only speculative, but contrary to evidence in his proffer that the sliding glass door to the residence The same door toward which Dylan reportedly saw the suspect walk was left open. Wow, are they serious here? For one, Dylan wouldn't lock the sliding doors? Oh, okay. She watched him walk out of the home in which she resides, reported to be spooked by him, and yet didn't make sure those doors were locked. Well, this is the scenario they're trying to paint, executing damage control about how Murphy got outside. In addition, Murphy would have left the third floor, ran downstairs on his own, despite his owner being on the same floor, ran downstairs to the second floor, and just trotted out of the home through the sliding doors. Guess he's following Koberger out of the home, you see. It's fitting, though, because neither one of them were physically inside the home during the murders anyway. Insanity. Quote, thus, if the dog heard barking was in fact Murphy, it could well have come back inside through the open door and gone into Miss Gonzalez's room on his own, where it evidently remained. There is simply no evidence to adopt defendant's speculation that someone brought Murphy inside after the suspect left the residence. Consequently, defendant has not shown that the failure of law enforcement to so speculate was a material and exculpatory omission that was intentionally or recklessly excluded. A Frank's hearing is not warranted on this issue. Unquote. Oh, I'm sorry, I was allowing your brain to comprehend this fuckery for a moment. If you noticed, they didn't associate Murphy with Kaylee in these scenarios, you see? Dylan claimed that she assumed Kaylee was playing with Murphy upstairs, right? If Murphy was in her bedroom with the door opened, although it's a poodle, he would have been barking I repeat, during the attacks upon Kaylee. In fact, Murphy would have been barking even before the alleged Koberger got to the third floor. Dogs sense danger, they detect such frequencies. So this changes the entire setting in the home. And once again, Murphy would perhaps attack the alleged lone killer, or at least show some form of defense, such as approaching Koberger little by little, barking, growling, whimpering, and such. This makes Koberger focus on Murphy, because he can't risk the dog foiling his plans. And in this scenario, while Koberger may not even be able to successfully murder Kaylee and Madison due to the annoying dog barking at him. You see, we already broke this fuckery down in our investigation, and now you're hearing from the prosecution how ridiculous that setting is. And then to suggest that Murphy, after the murders, casually trotted downstairs, never mind his beloved owner was massacred, heads out of the home, through sliding doors that were left unsecured by a surviving housemate, and just goes outside and notifies the neighborhood about the crime. Then after he's notified the neighborhood, he comes back into the home through the sliding doors and heads back upstairs and ignores Kaylee and Madison in the other bedroom and jumps back into Kaylee's bed. And I guess he locked the door and fell asleep like Dylan did. Oh, okay. Murphy never went into the bedroom to mourn Kaylee? Negative. Murphy would have went into Madison's bedroom and mourned over their deaths. In fact, he wouldn't go outside. He would stay right by their sides, crying until he fell asleep. The same way humans would mourn the death of a loved one, Murphy would do the same. He would stay with Kaylee and Madison until later that morning. Animals instinctively protect their owners, no matter how small or even how weak they are. If something happens to their owner, they will show their feelings by licking, sniffing, and simply laying next to the injured owner. And that's what Murphy would have done. Murphy showed more courage than the surviving housemates. He warned the neighborhood. He pleaded for the neighborhood to help, and everyone just looked the other way. Pathetic. What's more pathetic is the prosecution's attempt to hide the fact that someone took Murphy out of the home before the murders and brought him back after the murders. They think the public is stupid, my friends. Don't let them get away with this. Now, they couldn't take the dog away, of course, because it would lead directly to the co-owner in Jack D. So they had to bring Murphy back to the scene of the crime, placing him in the bedroom. Then after the smoke cleared, starts a fucking GoFundMe page for Murphy. Yeah, he's a sick individual for sure. They're literally leaking their own frame now. This is why all of this crap was sealed by the court, because Koberger would have been exonerated so fast, old hag Nancy Gray's eyes would pop out of her head. Damn near happening anyway. Dylan gets home earlier than everyone else, and we even suggested that she never left. Might have pretended to leave, or claimed she would go out but stayed at home. Jack D comes over and grabs Murphy from the home, soon after Kaylee and Madison arrived. I'm picking up on a logical setting here. Perhaps Jack D pretended to be angry about the breakup out of nowhere, justifying taking Murphy out of the home to cover for the incoming attacks. Kaylee attempts to contact Jack, and her pleading last words were, "We have a dog together," which were preceded by, "Don't do this, Jack. I'm sorry for everything." Think about it, if Kaylee appeared perfectly fine with the breakup, as she had landed a new job, was moving to Austin, Texas, why would she be sending texts such as that, stating, quote, "We have a dog together"? Mind you, she was taking Murphy with her, remember? Steve gave us this information. He stated that Kaylee sent Jack a text mentioning Murphy, saying, quote, "We have a dog together," unquote. But he said it in a nonchalant manner, and it certainly lacked context, justifying the whole power calling at night bullshit. Damage control, I tell you. The context he failed to provide in that interview was this was clearly a plea from Kaylee to Jack, after he basically pet-napped Murphy away from her, so the killers can come in uninterrupted by a little rascal barking and growling. Her concerns were about not only what danger they were facing, but also seeing Murphy as their child, which they shared in raising. That bond they had, Jack betrayed it. You see, this justifies Jack D's motive for taking Murphy out of the home before the attacks, making it appear he deserved to keep co-ownership. But he literally took Murphy away, which led to Kaylee pleading with him about it. Yet, it was all to cover up the plan to get Murphy out of the home before the attacks, because Murphy would be a distraction. Jack D was involved. Perhaps Jack S knew what would happen, and Bonnie and Clyde were the lower-level grunts of the operation, making sure the mission was completed.
Dylan's whereabouts were concealed prior to the murders, because she was still at the home, plotting with Bonnie and Clyde. Yeah, I said it, and I'm sticking to it. Now here's an interesting part of the affidavit that may have been overlooked. Quote, Dylan made statements during interview that indicated the occupants of the King Road residence were at home by 2 a.m. and reportedly asleep by approximately 4 a.m. This is with the exception of Kernodle, who received a DoorDash order at the residence at approximately 4 a.m. Dylan stated she was awoken at approximately 4 a.m. by what she stated sounded like Gonzalez playing with her dog in one of the upstairs bedrooms, which were located on the 3rd floor. A short time later, Dylan said she heard who she thought was Gonzalez say something to the effect of, "There's someone here." A review of forensic records associated with a download of Kernodle's cellular phone indicated she was likely awake and using the TikTok app at approximately 4:12 a.m., unquote. Okay, there are a few issues here. First off, it says that reportedly everyone was asleep by 4 a.m., except for Xana. There is no way for law enforcement to confirm that everyone was asleep by this time. So why did they create that scenario? The right way to describe the setting in the home, based on Dylan's accounts, is to provide what she observed, nothing more, nothing less. For example, based on Dylan's accounts, she provides details about the setting in the home prior to when she went to sleep, such as when she arrived back home and when everyone else arrived back home. And then once she stated she went to sleep, at whatever time frame prior to 4 a.m., you leave it there. And when you add your summary into this setting, you state, quote, "It is not confirmed whether the housemates were asleep around 4 a.m., and we assume that Kernodle was awake based on her cell phone activity." Now, the term reportedly is basically saying a source provides this assumption that those housemates were asleep at 4 a.m. But law enforcement would be getting this assumption from someone who didn't clarify, or it wasn't clarified in the police report what time they went to sleep, you see. So because you don't have the time frame Dylan went to sleep, you can't use her as a source of the assumption those housemates went to sleep at 4 a.m. It's stated that Dylan awoke around 4 a.m., so if she was asleep prior, she can't tell you when those housemates went to sleep. Heck, she can't even give you an estimated time, because there is no indication that anyone was asleep around this time frame. You don't create a setting in the home without any evidence to support that narrative. Because what did that do early on in the case? It created the setting where those housemates were murdered in their sleep, you see. The reason that setting was alluded to, by saying reportedly they were asleep, is to actually protect the fact that Dylan was not, I repeat, was not asleep at any point that night, from the time everyone came home to the time everyone had been murdered. You see, Dylan came home approximately at 1 a.m., yet she knew everyone had arrived back at home around 2 a.m. So this means she had to be in contact with them, or heard everyone coming back. But if you noticed, during this time frame, like mentioned prior, there was no interaction with the housemates upon arriving back home. If everyone was out having fun, partying, and such when everyone comes back home, there will be a chill time, everyone kind of hanging out in the living room for a while, before they all disperse into their private quarters. Not to say that it's always like that, Come on, 9 times out of 10, this is how housemates wind down after partying. But no accounts of interacting between the time frame of 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. Well, this is because this is the time frame the murders were carried out. Remember the other interview Dylan had, she interacted with her housemates, telling them she's trying to sleep and all, as they were making noise. And the so-called lone killer. Well, she thought he was a partygoer that visited the home for some late-night partying. If you merge these two scenarios together, what do you get? Well, you get a setting in the home where Dylan was awake, never was asleep, was sitting in her room listening and peeking, while those housemates were being attacked, then murdered. Then it says a short time later, Dylan said she heard who she thought was Kaylee say something to the effect of, "There's someone here." Well, in another interview, she claims that Kaylee ran downstairs and had made this statement. The same statement, but totally two different scenarios. In the first scenario, she's upstairs with Madison and states, "There's someone here." We went over this early in the investigation, and obviously she's talking to Madison. And if she was talking to Madison, then you have both girls aware of a danger, which means Dylan would also know of that danger, even before them. But in the other scenario, Kaylee running downstairs stating there's someone here, is like she heard someone on the 3rd floor snooping around, and she ran away from them. Now we noticed here, in either scenario, there is no mention of hearing Madison upstairs. But if Kaylee is talking, based on Dylan's accounts, who would she be talking to if not Madison on the same floor with her? And in the same bedroom? Was Madison murdered before Kaylee? It's possible. And it would be logical for Kaylee to state that because of what she witnessed. It's all jumbled up bullshit. We're trying to detangle all of it to make the most sense of that setting in the home. But then you have law enforcement interjecting, claiming it was more likely Xana who made that statement, due to her cell phone activity. Well, the same concept applies my friends, who would Xana be talking to, stating there's someone here. It would have to be Ethan, right? Whoever was aware of someone in the home is talking to another housemate. You can't avoid that scenario. And this means at least 2 people were alerted by an intruder. In the lone killer narrative, it would be difficult for him to attack without facing a challenge that was already mentally prepared, you see. Let me elaborate on this, because we need to bring some of our audience members up to speed on what we've already broke down. If 2 housemates are mentally prepared to put up resistance, meaning they are aware of someone in the home that's a threat, the physical confrontation is more fierce, more aggressive, survival instincts are through the roof. In other words, the lone killer can't focus on one target, because the other target in either bedroom is also putting up a fight. Regardless of how young and scared those housemates may have been, the lone killer risked being overwhelmed due to multiple attacks from 2 people simultaneously. If he started upstairs first, he would not only struggle with Kaylee and Madison, but Murphy would pose an intermediate threat, just based on being a distraction, and could do a little damage. He's a little warrior in our eyes. And of course, everyone else downstairs would be alerted, and now you have Ethan, Xana, Dylan, from Koberger's view of course, and possibly Bethany, all aware of those attacks against Kaylee and Madison upstairs. Koberger is likely not getting out of that jam. Too much resistance merely by strength in numbers. Again, we broke this down. If he started with Ethan and Xana, just flipped the scenario. Everyone would be alerted of the danger, and based on the reports, Xana damn near would take him down, as fierce as she was, right? Then you add the muscle of Ethan. He wouldn't even get close to the 3rd floor. Again, with possibly Dylan and Bethany, added strength just by being a distraction in the home. You see, any type of distraction alters how a lone killer would behave, how he would make decisions, and these are split-second decisions he has to make, being faced with different challenges, and unpredictable challenges as well. What if Xana jumped on his back as he attempted to stab Ethan to death? Now he's being overwhelmed, because Ethan gains the stronger position, as he can now focus on wrestling the knife out of his hand with Xana biting Koberger in the fucking ear. You see, the point here, any awareness of the lone killer in the home, which was relayed to another housemate, creates a tensed and unpredictable scenario for the lone killer, because he can't effectively attack without being distracted by other possible challenges. And then you have Murphy there to make things even more anxious. Oh wait, that's why he was taken out of the home before it went down. Guess Koberger quietly got Murphy to obey him, with goddamn Scooby snacks he had in his kill kit. Mastermind indeed. Before entering the home, he laid out a trail of Scooby snacks outside the home, leading out into the yard to lure Murphy out of the... Okay, that's enough.
Again, coming back to Doc, Yep, we're gonna stay on that claim, because now it's really starting to make sense. Dylan, Bonnie, and Clyde, a male with pale skin and colorful hair, being Jack D, and another male with a hoodie on, Jack S, were seen outside the home on the porch, smoking marijuana. Jack S warned the girls. Jack D came and grabbed Murphy and ignored the girls' pleading phone calls. Bonnie and Clyde oversaw the hit and pretended to order Jack in a crack for Xana, and Dylan was the one inside giving them the intel they needed. She is guilty of conspiring to have her housemates murdered. It doesn't matter if she was forced to do it, she did it, and now there's no escaping the truth. Bethany may have a part in this as well, but if we're talking about who actually conspired against those housemates, I don't see Bethany doing that. She seemed as if she really was happy around them, while Dylan, not so much. We've all seen the photos. Dylan appeared to be a bit detached from everyone. Some claim that it's because she was the youngest, more rebellious, wanting to bring more fun to the home and all, and that may be the case. It's also speculated that Dylan comes from a wealthy family also, a bit snobbish to her housemates. Was she the real preppy girl in the house? It seems so when you look at everyone's family backgrounds. Her housemates' families struggled with drug addictions, and who knows if she really were their friends. The photo of Dylan and Kaylee says a lot. It said, "My family has more money than yours, but I want your popularity." Yep, that's what we picked up on. The other photo of Dylan and Kaylee in the backseat of a vehicle. We examined Kaylee's facial expression and demeanor, and she appeared to be a deer caught in the headlights, as Dylan gave a nefarious grin to the right side of her. The same nefarious grin in the other photo, standing behind Kaylee, blowing the bubble gum. We came to the conclusion that Dylan introduced those housemates to dangerous individuals, and that photo could have been them being involved in a drug transaction. Where Kaylee looked like she was being introduced to a lifestyle she wasn't sure she wanted. It was Dylan, of all people in the house, who invited Kaylee back to Moscow for a party. Why was it Kaylee? In fact, why didn't she ask Madison, Bethany, or Xana to be her so-called plus one at a party? Because Kaylee needed to come back to Moscow to take out all of the intended targets all at once. They already had the other three, and Dylan was instructed to get Kaylee back in town. And soon after, well, we all know what happened. The chaos meter is building, my friends, and we can't control anything once it reaches the limit. This is the chaos sector,